Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now July 17th of 2025, and given that the Walt Disney Company is dealing with a lot of setbacks, a lot of ongoing issues, not just related to Disney Plus and their ongoing programs, but also theater movies, right? Movies that actually go into the theaters for theatrical releases and how they've had multiple box office failures before in the past. But one of the biggest obstacles that they're dealing with right now is Disney ABC's The View, right? The very program that actually features those like Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, Whoopi Goldberg, etc., and how they really became a political commentary show in the worst way that you could imagine over the years. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, there's a lot of things going on right now with the Epstein files, alright? This entire subject is beginning to actually turn a lot of celebrities into different directions, right? We already saw what Stephen King did, we saw what Whoopi Goldberg did, and now it's very, very revealing. Has a lot to do with what's been going on with Disney CEO Bob Iger, including the Disney Board of Directors. Let's jump into this. Now, one thing about Disney is that we know that they're getting very desperate when it comes to either bumping up ratings for shows or getting better box office, turnout for a movie, whatever it may be. If it's Marvel, Star Wars, or a Disney live-action remake, they want to actually have box office success points from this point on forward because they just can't afford it anymore after, of course, especially 2023 and 24 was, pretty much a consistent flop era. Now, interestingly enough, on top of everything here, with the Disney Board of Directors and CEO Bob Iger now in a very divisive moment for multiple reasons. One major development now involves more to do with the Epstein files and how Bob Iger got caught up with the entire situation that's causing him to panic. It turns out that since the ratings decline for their program The View has been sharply declining in recent weeks, they are very desperate to bump up ratings for that show in isolation. The majority of the board is now pressuring, raising their political narrative on The View, not just with Whoopi, Sunny, and Joy to discuss the Epstein files, but also a brand new co-host to come on temporarily to discuss the Epstein files. Shockingly, Bob Iger was reportedly very defensive about this forced proposal that Disney higher-ups, the board, are now pushing for, and they are putting all pressure on Bob Iger. Everything is on Iger. Turns out that in their recent emergency meeting/call related to the failing ratings for The View via ABC, Bob Iger actually snapped at the board of directors where he did have intense defensive arguments to not discuss the Epstein files, ever, period. And now Bob Iger did comment that what Whoopi Goldberg commented on about the files was completely out of line and unauthorized and not greenlit by ABC producers. Regardless of Bob Iger's defensive arguments, the Disney board is still in a wide agreement with each other, and they are very determined to not just discuss the Epstein files and to double down on that, but to also jack up their political talking points on The View. This is all coming in the midst of how Trump made several comments just recently that now the Epstein client list just does not exist and that it was a hoax by the Democrats. Already Bob Iger not only raised his voice and shouted at the board of directors and kept pushing them to not go through with this new narrative on The View, but that also Bob Iger reportedly had frazzled energy when trying to stop the board from pursuing talking points of the Epstein files on The View via ABC. It turns out that the board listened to Whoopi Goldberg's proposal through ABC producers that talked about the files, and how that would be good for ratings and would give them a good bump for a while. These tensions that are raising right now are already creating tons of backlash for Bob Iger, since he is resisting something that the majority of the board is determined to do, including the ABC producers. In light of all of this, the board is also pushing Bob Iger to join them in their agreement to create a brand new politically based show, a politically based talking show either on ABC or Disney Plus, to something that Bob Iger had previously proposed months ago, that he is now trying to shy away from out of nowhere, ever since the Epstein files subject exploded on social media. Now guys, let me just stop here for one moment. It really does sound quite fishy now that Bob Iger is beginning to actually change his tune, especially with this subject in particular. And look, there's a lot of things going on right now. You have Trump saying that the Epstein files was a hoax created by the Democrats and how A lot of people are having differing opinions about that. You know, you're hearing some people say, if Trump was really on the list, why wouldn't Democrats expose that when they had the list back, you know, in the early 2020s, and especially when Joe Biden was in office, right? But what's interesting about this yet again is that we also know at the same exact time that Bob Iger is now just suddenly changing tune when it comes to The View, bringing up these type of political commentary talking points. Now look, we're all going to have differing opinions about this whole Trump situation and exactly what's going on with Trump's comments on the Epstein files, and there's a lot of very interesting talking points coming from not just his supporters, but also his critics, and those that really just are not for Trump, and those that are also for Trump. And so it's a very interesting discussion, to say the least. And I think that's exactly why, obviously, Bob Iger just does not want to deal with this. I think that there's something going on with the Epstein files that maybe is connected to Disney. That's the only thing that anybody could really think about. Who knows? But one thing is for certain is that Bob Iger is acting very scared. He's getting very defensive, getting very angry toward the board for bringing up these proposals to talk about the Epstein files on The View, and they want this to actually be done effective immediately so that Joy, Whoopi, and Sunny can actually bump up the ratings. Now look, I am not defending Disney by any means. I despise The View. I despise the hosts of The View. I do not like the Disney board of directors or Disney CEO Bob Iger. But let's just focus on this in isolation. There is a very divisive moment going on right now between Iger and the board based on the entire subject of the Epstein files. Now, based on this subject exploding on social media, you're seeing a lot of celebrities, a lot of high-status executives in different corporations and production studios out there, and even major Hollywood studios like the Walt Disney Company. They're showing very odd behavior out of nowhere, alright? Look, we already know that Bob Iger had plans to create a political show for Disney Plus and/or ABC just months ago, and now he wants that flushed down the toilet immediately. He also wanted to talk more about the Epstein list, so to speak, quote-unquote, or the Epstein files, and that suddenly went away. Interestingly enough here, alright, on top of that, ABC producers reportedly are also begging Bob Iger to work with the board and to come to a full agreement to discuss that list and the files. Iger had moments where he was even screaming at the board members, warning them that if they start to discuss the files, they will be looked at in a different way. Some board members found it suspicious why Bob Iger suddenly changed his tune to refuse these talking points. The fact that some board members that are specifically for Bob Iger and very supportive of the guy, are finding it very suspicious why he's acting this way, it really makes you wonder what is going on, right? And we may very well never learn about what's going on with Bob Iger and why he's suddenly getting very defensive over not bringing up the Epstein files, period, on The View. Now, we already know that the hosts of The View, they have no boundaries, they're very unhinged, they're gonna say whatever they want to say. They may get in trouble, and they always do. Do they end up getting fired in the long run? Most likely not. You know, there are actual conversations going on that they want to replace Whoopi Goldberg. Bob Iger wants to actually can her, get somebody else on there. If they can't, they want to get a new co-host on there. They're still talking with Kathy Griffin to renegotiate with her. We'll talk more about that. But if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.